Hey guys, Tough Dog here. I was going to do this gameplay against Outlaw to kind of better represent how much crazy damage you can inflict on those armored enemies, but a few of you were kind of more curious to see how this build performs against the Remnant due to the flying enemies and the destroyers and whatnot. So yeah, here we are. There's a couple things you should kind of keep in mind while you're watching this. The first thing is, this is gameplay with no boosters on. I thought it would be a lot better to showcase the kind of baseline potential, and then let you guys tack on the boosters if you want, so that way you can feel stronger than this gameplay is if you really want to go crazy. But more importantly, I wanted to make sure that you would never really feel weaker than what I demonstrate here. And the second thing is, this isn't a flawless game. I do whiff some of my stickies at one point just into the sky for no apparent reason, and I also end up popping one of my first aid kits. Now, once we get to the point where I actually end up using the kit, I'll explain why, because it'll really go a long way to kind of show you how much awareness of the map is really important on the Avenger. Anyways, let's get to analyzing what's going on. Watch how frequently I use my cloak. I pretty much always have myself stealthed. Every time I engage on a target that I want to assassinate, I kind of do whatever sort of attack combo is appropriate for that situation, and then I immediately disengage with the cloak. Spamming your cloak when you want to disengage significantly boosts your survivability, and it really lets you kind of freely travel the map. You never really have to worry about the kind of stray observers or the anointed kind of locking onto you before you tackle them. Learning to really abuse Stealth Grid is, in my opinion, one of the kind of core fundamentals of the Avenger, regardless to whether you're running my melee build, the gun build that I'm working on, or any variety of your own build. Stealth Grid is just such a powerful utility that if you really kind of abuse it to get the most out of it, it can easily carry you through games. Watch how often I jump to get a good lock on enemies. If you can't target something with the Avenger Strike, but you can see its health bar or its armor or whatever, I've found that often the case is that if you jump, you'll get just enough of a vantage increase to enable you to strike to that enemy. Now, sometimes I'll even aim down sights to get that hover effect while waiting for the enemy pathing to put them where I need for me to be able to lock onto them. So if you haven't noticed already, there's a kind of a basic combo that I do for the observers. While cloaked, I Avenger Strike to them, and I follow up with 2 stickies. This will guarantee you a kill on them, and again, this is with no boosters, no enhancements, nothing. As long as you're following the same build, you'll be able to do the same. Now right here, I end up not even following my own advice, and I cloak a little bit late. Because I cloaked late, I ended up taking a little bit of unnecessary damage. It's not really anything major, but if you're kind of stalling your cloaking, you're going to be putting yourself in a lot more risk than you kind of need to. Now, because the kind of Avenger Strike sticky combo is a guaranteed kill on them, you can really just cloak and disengage as soon as you've thrown the second sticky. You don't have to wait for them to detonate or for the target to die or anything. This really gives you a lot of momentum because you can just keep jumping from target to target to really pick off anything that you kind of want to take out of the fight. Something I go over a little bit in the build guide is the importance of jumping around a lot. Enemies can't see you while you're cloaked, but they will shoot at the last position that they did see you. So if you cloak while you're falling or while you're jumping, they'll end up kind of shooting into the sky, so this really makes the odds of them clipping you with those stray bullets very, very low. But just now you saw me engaging and then immediately cloaking. I did this because there were too many enemies for me to really kind of handle all at once, so instead I used some stickies to kind of cut their numbers before re-engaging. Throughout this gameplay, you'll see all the various different ways that I handle enemies. Just remember that I usually start all of these engages while cloaked, because it really just gives you a nice bonus to your damage, and it also kind of gives you the element of surprise. Now, for observers, I usually stick to the same pattern, because the strike sticky tends to be the most consistent. You can use other tactics to really deal with them, but that's generally going to be your safest bet, and the one that always kind of works with the shield gating mechanic to make sure that you kill them. Everything else is really up to you on how you want to handle it. So if you really like opening with stickies, you can follow that up with an Avenger Strike and then finish the enemy off with a couple of melee hits. That'll also give you more stacks towards your close quarters rampaging bonus. For double nullifiers, I always strike in and then immediately cloak. This causes them to drop their shields, so your stickies are going to do damage to both instead of getting blocked by the barriers. When it comes to the hack objective, there's a few different approaches that you can kind of take to it. I usually start on the point, and then if all of my allies are on it too, I'll strike 2 enemies that are off of the point to kind of keep them busy. Keeping enemies distracted, especially the nullifiers and the destroyers and all that kind of stuff, it really helps to alleviate some of the pressure on your team, and it makes the objective go a lot more smoothly. With that said though, you also want to be really cautious about leaving the point if it's only maybe you and one other ally on it. You don't want to end up leaving the point to try and pull enemies off, and then end up leaving that ally to die because they won't be able to defend from all of the other enemies that are swarming the point. Now, you need to make sure that you're kind of using your stickies wisely, but at the same time, don't be afraid to just chuck them all into a group if you need to. Power cells double dip, so if you've used 4 stickies and 4 stealth grids, a full ammo crate will still top you off a boat. You want to make sure that you're using this to your advantage. As you become a little bit more intimate with the crate locations, you can start to get a lot more aggressive with your sticky and grid usage, because you'll know exactly how long and kind of when you'll be refilling. So it's really good to make sure that you're expending all of them before you hit that resupply box, or otherwise you're kind of missing out on potential. Most enemies don't really go very far very fast, so if you're out of stickies, or more importantly your grids for the disengage after the kill, don't feel like you have to kind of engage on that target to kill them right away. You can just go swing by a box, restock, and then return to that target. If you make it a habit to kind of brush past any crates that you come near while you're wandering around, you shouldn't really have to divert your path very often, but it's usually never a bad idea. If you're feeling exceptionally lazy, you can just pop an ammo pack. But the thing with this is, if you make a habit out of that, you will find out that you actually do run out of those. So I find it's better to just kind of build up the better habit of just swinging past any ammo crates that you tend to walk past while you're wandering the map. I had some people ask about how you deal with destroyers with this build. See, in a minute you're actually about to see me just kind of nope the hell away from a destroyer. Destroyers by themselves actually aren't that dangerous, though. The things that make them generally dangerous are the things like the nullifiers and the observers, because those enemies force you out of cover in front of the destroyers, which is what lets the destroyers kill you. So with this build, your job isn't really to deal with the destroyer directly, it's more so to assassinate all of the other high priority targets as quickly as possible. This helps take a lot of that pressure off of your team, so then they can kind of easily deal with the destroyers. If it's an objective wave though, don't be afraid to get some use out of those cobras when the destroyers open up that glowing crit spot in the front. Okay, so I don't often use ammo kits, but I do use one right here. I do this for a specific reason. If I come out of stealth to finish off the nullifier, the observer will finish me off because of the low health that I have. Even though I have the grids to go back into cloak right away, he would still lock onto me and kill me. So instead, I use the ammo restore to top off my stickies, which lets me safely finish off the nullifier. And then thanks to the stun on disrupting strike, even though I have low health, I'm able to engage on another enemy right away. As per usual, right after we finish him off, we cloak again and then start looking for our next victim. So as you can tell, my Janice the Ripper build is a really fast-paced assassination style build, and even when you put yourself in a risky situation, if you kind of think critically for a second, you usually end up being able to get out of it pretty easily. So most risky situations aren't actually kind of that risky for you. This right here is probably the most clear-cut example you'll get the entire match of how powerful that close quarters melee bonus damage is and why I really opt for that talent choice. The strikes and the kill on the first nullifier let me just completely, absolutely obliterate the second one. Something you'll almost always see me doing is cloaking right before I grab ammo. Like I mentioned earlier, power cells, because they double dip, there's no reason not to refresh the duration of your cloak before you stock back up. It's just kind of another way to really min-max things. This little tactic helps keep you stealthed a lot longer when you're traveling around the map. All of the tactics that you see me employing here are really easily transferable to pretty much any of the other factions. For the Remnant, we're prioritizing the nullifiers and observers, obviously. For the Ket, you really want to focus on those anointed, and then for the Outlaw, you really have a ton of easy targets there because they have so many armored enemies. But your primary focus is going to be those berserkers. When you take out these targets, you make games significantly easier and smoother for your entire team. Because usually these are the enemies that kind of start turning games if people start making silly decisions. Now, there's an argument to be made that the bosses are the highest priority targets, but even on other characters, I always end up focusing them down last because generally the bosses are actually really slow and mostly non-threatening. It's once the other enemies kind of start pressuring your entire team at the same time, that's when the bosses start to become a little bit more deadly. So if you make your way around the map, kind of deleting all of these enemies that work with the bosses to kind of turn games against you, then it makes things just go a lot easier. Don't get me wrong though, when you're on those objective waves and the bosses start creeping up on whatever objective you're on, that can make things really kind of dangerous. So in those cases, it's really worth focusing on them or kind of shoving a cobra down their throat. But for the most part, it's really those lesser enemies that make the greater impact. It's really odd, but that's just kind of how it happens. Now, coming up is the part where I mentioned how I had to pop a first aid kit in this game. I follow my normal, like, half a looper on the map that I tend to run, since I usually kind of run in circles to just hit the same ammo boxes over and over, but I start hitting the crates too quickly. Now, during waves, the power cells at crates will regenerate. Just once you hit the box, it kind of puts it on like an internal cooldown or a timer sort of thing, before it'll refill and you can restock there again. Now, I used my last cloak, and instead of going to a fresh ammo box to collect more cells with it, I kind of go a little Rambo and I engage on the nullifier. This ends up burning the stealth from the cloak, and it leaves me with no more grids and a bunch of empty boxes nearby. So you end up seeing me frantically sprint around trying to check all the various ammo crates that I normally hit, but they end up all being drained. I end up seeing the one down in the middle area below that has cells in it, so I make a leap for it. And in doing so, I leave myself vulnerable to the observer that's kind of in the little area. So I kind of pigeonholed or forced myself into using the first aid pack. This just kind of goes to show you that you really need to make sure that you're having a lot of map presence and that you're covering all the areas, or otherwise you're going to just start hitting the same ammo boxes too frequently and you're not going to be able to restock anymore. The Angaro Avenger is really one of the strongest characters that you can pick in the multiplayer right now, but she really comes at that kind of cost where if you start slacking, you really leave yourself vulnerable. For Wave 6, we end up getting devices, which, when you have an Avenger or a Huntress, or really any Infiltrator type class, this is by far the easiest objective, as pretty much everyone knows. With the Huntress or the Avenger, because you have that stealth grid, you can easily knock it out in about a minute. I usually hang out somewhere in the middle-ish of the map, waiting for the kind of device logos to pop up on the screen, and as soon as they pop up, I start sprinting my way there. Somewhere kind of in route, I'll end up popping a stealth grid. I do this so that I'm safe getting there without drawing any enemies, and also so that way I'm already invisible when I get there, so I can just immediately hack the device and then start making my way to the next one. Now, following the first device, I usually I'll Avenger Strike back to get somewhere towards the center-ish of the map again, so that way I don't have to worry about trying to sprint all the way across the map if it ends up like completely kitty corner, which this one it actually does, but an ally ends up picking it up. I don't actually worry about trying to kill the enemy when I Avenger Strike to traverse the map, because I'm not really trying to focus on killing them, I'm just using it for the mobility. I'll put some damage into them if the device logo hasn't popped up yet, but as soon as it does, I'll use another stealth grid and head off in that direction. And you really want to make sure that when you're kind of doing this sprinting from device to device tactic or any objective, that like always you gotta really keep up on that habit of brushing past the ammo crates. I've highlighted it in this video so you can see just how often I actually do hit them. So it's a really important habit to have, because as we've kind of covered a bunch of times now, without those power cells, you're really vulnerable, and with those power cells, you're obnoxiously powerful. So it's just something that you kind of have to maintain in order to keep up that insane power level. For some really clutch tactics, you can actually just sit on an upload point while cloaked, and as soon as you hear the little kind of beep sound of the cloak ending, you just use another one. This lets you capture points pretty freely, actually. The only issue with this is if you have allies who are sitting next to you and they immediately break the cloak by firing, because then obviously they'll draw the enemies back in. But if the rest of your team is on the other 2 points, you can pretty freely capture whichever one you're on. There are tons of various ways that you can just really abuse Stealth Grid to achieve some really interesting results. So you really just need to experiment with it. The more you kind of build up the habit of spamming it and just kind of making it second nature to swing by those ammo boxes, the more the Avenger will really start to shine as an insanely powerful character. Alright guys, I know I talk a lot, but thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this in-depth analysis of the Avenger and getting a closer look at how I run the Janice the Ripper build. And if you haven't seen that yet, I'll leave links in the description below that will take you to the Reddit text version of the guide and the YouTube version of the build as well. If you liked this video, consider leaving a like to let me know, or maybe drop a comment. I love chatting with you guys. It's so much fun to just kind of share ideas and hear your feedback. And you guys just have been incredibly amazing and supportive, and I really never expected my my videos or my channel to kind of grow as fast as it is. So really, just thank you guys so much for making all of this possible. I just love to tinker and experiment with things, so I always have a blast making these guides, and I plan to put out many more. So if you want to catch all of the kind of content I'll be putting out, consider subscribing as well if you're not already. In any case, guys, thanks again, and I will catch you later.
Squad member down. That's how Apex gets it done. Come on home.